They said Earth was a myth. I used to believe them, until I decoded the signal buried in the black wave static, a rhythm too deliberate to be natural, a voice too human to be coincidence. I didn't tell the crew. I didn't even log it. I just sat there, frozen, staring at that pulsating echo that vibrated through my skull like a forgotten prayer. They sealed Earth for a reason. I should have left it buried. My name's Riven, ex-Navy, now scavenger, floating around in a rusted shell called the Call Breaker, piecing together old tech from dead sectors. The kind of work no one wants, the kind that gets you spaced or worse. But it pays. And I don't have the luxury of conscience. The signal came from beyond the pale grid. Dead space, forbidden territory. A place where nothing should still breathe, yet something was calling. It used an ancient Earth dialect, one not spoken in over 10,000 cycles. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because something inside me remembered it. The pale grid isn't marked on modern star maps. It's a scar, a massive no-fly zone enforced by every major galactic power. No one enters, no one returns. There are stories, sure, all scrubbed from official records, but in the underbelly of orbital hubs, you hear whispers. Words like Red Mist Protocol, E-Class Extinction Order, Human Containment Initiatives. One phrase always stood out. Earth wasn't abandoned, it was exiled. We broke through the pale edge 5 days ago. No resistance, no alarms, just silence. It was like stepping into a tomb that had forgotten it was supposed to be dead. Space here was darker, heavier, as if the void itself was watching. Czar, my engineer, said the radiation signatures didn't match anything on record. He thought maybe we'd stumbled into a quantum graveyard, remnants of an imploded dimension. He didn't live long enough to be proven wrong. On day 2, he went outside the ship to run diagnostics. He screamed once. Then his suit went quiet. We pulled him back in. His helmet was intact, but his face, it was gone, not melted, not crushed, just missing. Like it had never existed. Like something had reached inside the suit and erased the idea of him. We should have turned back. But the signal, it kept getting stronger. I didn't tell the crew, but I started dreaming. Earth, but not the one from the archives. No green fields or blue oceans. Just black skies, ruined cities that pulsed with red veins. Something was growing under the soil, breathing, thinking, waiting, and in those dreams, I saw us, humanity, not dying, not extinct, but changed, evolved into something ancient civilizations feared enough to seal us away, not destroy, contain. We reached orbit yesterday. There was no moon, no satellites, just Earth, cracked, jagged, glowing from within like a wounded god. The continents had shifted unnaturally, as if torn by claws instead of tectonics. But it was alive, and it saw us. Our ship lost all power the second we crossed into the exosphere. Everything went dark. Artificial gravity held, but barely. Life support systems flickered. Engines were unresponsive. Then the voice came. Not through comms, through bone. It wasn't speaking words. It was showing memories. Millions of lives, billions of deaths. The screams of a galaxy begging for mercy. A war not recorded in any galactic history. A war we started, not because we wanted to conquer, but because we couldn't help it. It was in us. Still is. The galaxy didn't wipe us out. They made a deal with something older, something that agreed to lock Earth away, if they promised never to come back. Now we're here, and the deal is broken. Start the engines, the doors are opening, and the thing they sealed inside Earth, it's no longer alone. We drifted, dead orbit around a planet that shouldn't be alive. Power was gone, engines locked, shields failed. The artificial lights inside the callbreaker flickered low like dying candles, casting long shadows across the cold walls of the command deck. No one said a word for almost 3 hours. We were waiting for something. Waiting for the planet to speak again. Waiting for something to come up from those crimson cracks like a nightmare with our names in its mouth. And deep down, we all knew. We were trespassers. I watched my second-in-command, Phoenix, try and reroute power manually. His hands shook like he'd been downing stimulants for days. He was all soldier, all steel. But now? He looked like a man trying to hold his own sanity together with duct tape. "How's it looking?" I asked quietly, knowing the answer. He didn't look at me, just kept tapping buttons that did nothing. "Like God unplugged the universe," he said. 3 of the 7 remaining crew were huddled in the medbay, whispering prayers from forgotten religions. One of them, a nav tech named Aaron, kept muttering something under his breath. I pressed a hand to the glass and listened. "The ash remembers," he said. "The ash remembers. The ash remembers." He'd been normal yesterday. Now he wouldn't blink. I told the medic to sedate him. But the injector snapped in half when she tried. The liquid inside sizzled, boiled, and evaporated like it was allergic to the ship. Even our tools were betraying us. The temperature inside the ship kept dropping. By hour 5, condensation had frosted over the walls. It shouldn't have. Life support was still technically working, but something in the air had changed. It was heavy, like walking through water. The kind of pressure that makes your ears pop on a mountaintop, except this was constant, pressing inward, breathing with us. Earth pulsed below like a slow heart. The cracked land masses radiated a deep red glow that shimmered like lava, but it wasn't heat. It was something older. Raw, alive. I'd seen death before, war, blood, but this wasn't death. This was containment. We weren't orbiting a planet. We were orbiting a prison. I went back to my quarters for a moment. Needed to think. Needed silence. The door barely slid open. The metal hissed like it was resisting the movement. I didn't sit. Couldn't. Every inch of my skin itched. Something in me, something I didn't recognize, was awake, like a second spine uncoiling in the back of my skull. I opened my old personal logs, looking for the waveform I'd saved, the one from the signal that brought us here. But the file was gone. Worse, it had been replaced. I opened it. A face stared back. My face, but it was older, paler, with black veins crawling up the neck like roots, and the eyes, they weren't eyes. They were holes. Then it spoke in my voice. "You brought them here. You opened the door. Again." I slammed the terminal shut. The lights died for 2 full seconds. When they came back on, the screen was blank. No logs, no trace, nothing. I returned to the bridge and found Phoenix standing in the middle of the room with his weapon drawn, pointed at the floor. At first, I thought he'd lost it. Then I saw what he was aiming at. Blood. Not dripping. Flowing, like it was seeping up from the floor plates. Thick, dark, almost black. A slow stream from nowhere, creeping toward the navigation console. "Tell me I'm not seeing that," he whispered. "You are." "What the hell's going on, Cap?" "We're inside something's memory." He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, but I knew that blood wasn't new. It wasn't fresh. It had been waiting, just like the dreams, just like the voice. Earth wasn't sending a signal. It was remembering, and now it was remembering us. Hour 6. Aaron was gone. Just gone. No signs of forced entry, no screams, nothing on the surveillance footage. Just him sitting in the corner of the medbay, whispering, and then static. When the feed returned, the chair was empty. His jumpsuit was folded neatly on the floor. Bones gone, skin gone, not a drop of blood. No one spoke after that. We just moved slower, looked over our shoulders more. Every corridor felt longer. Every sound felt closer. By hour 7, I started to hear the breathing. Not mine, not the crew's. It came from the hull. Steady. Inhale, exhale, as if the ship was inside lungs that stretched across the void. We made the decision then. We had to leave orbit, even if the engines were dead, even if it meant drifting until oxygen ran out. We couldn't stay. Not this close, not this exposed. We needed distance. Time to think. We ran a cold restart of the emergency thrusters. No ignition. Then Phoenix suggested something stupid. Reroute heat sinks through the old core jump relay and shock the fusion matrix. I didn't argue. We were already in a death spiral. He did it manually, pulled off his glove, jammed the override spike into the console barehanded. Electricity surged. His mouth opened, but no scream came out, just a pulse of sound that knocked everyone to the floor. The engines coughed once, then lit. For 7 glorious seconds we had thrust. Then the ship screamed, not the engine, the ship. The walls groaned like they were made of bone. The lights went black again, and through the viewport, we saw it. It wasn't the planet. It was above it. Something massive, barely visible, like the shadow of a god that stretched around the curve of the earth. It wasn't made of metal or matter. It shimmered, like it was made of thoughts, broken time, and regret. The stars behind it twisted, gravity bent, light shivered. We stared in silence, and then it turned. Not physically, but mentally. Every one of us felt its attention, like a beam slicing through flesh and soul, and in that moment, I understood something horrifying. It wasn't guarding Earth. It was guarding the galaxy from Earth, and we'd just given it a reason to look away. I don't know how long we were unconscious. I woke up in the cargo bay, alone, covered in frost. The ship was still in orbit, but different, colder, quieter. I stumbled to the bridge, empty, no bodies, no signs of struggle, just one thing left behind, written in blood across the navigation panel. "You were never meant to leave." I sat down, alone, and pulled the override chip from my coat. It was old Earth tech, illegal, dangerous, but designed to store deep-wave memories, even corrupted ones. I'd stolen it years ago from a derelict lab near the Vandar Belt. Never knew why. Now I do. I slotted it into the console and accessed the last broadcast from the planet. This time it didn't resist. It welcomed me. Vision blurred. Blood ran from my nose. My ears popped. And then, images. Cities burning from the inside out. Skies raining glass. Voices screaming in unison across continents. Not from pain. From awakening. Humanity's awakening. The last words before Earth was sealed away. They feared what we were becoming. But not because we were monsters, because we were gods without chains. I understand now. The galaxy didn't exile us out of mercy. They did it to survive. Because somewhere in our blood, in our memory, we touched something the stars were never meant to feel. And we brought it back with us. It's inside me now. I can hear it breathing. I can feel it watching through my eyes. It's awake. And I'm not sure I'm still just me. I haven't slept in 2 days. Not because I don't want to, because I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. The ones who came before us. Not ancestors, not explorers. The originals. The first humans who broke the sky open and looked the universe in the eye without blinking. They didn't conquer galaxies. They didn't wage wars. They did something far worse. They understood. And the moment they did, the stars turned on them. The callbreaker is a grave now. The lights are mostly dead, flickering randomly like the ships trying to keep me confused. No signs of the crew. They didn't scream. They didn't bleed. They just slipped out of time. I found Phoenix's jacket hanging on the back of the pilot seat, neatly folded, still warm. I should be panicking, screaming, losing my mind, but I'm calm. Too calm. That's how I know I'm not alone anymore. Something's inside me, not possessing, not controlling, just observing, like a virus waking up in a forgotten host. I wandered down to the engine room earlier. I don't know why. The doors were open, which made no sense. They always required biometric clearance, and there's no power left to override anything. But there it was. Open. Inside, the reactor was humming softly, but not like a machine. It was breathing, slow, rhythmic, alive. The casing had changed, warped, melted in some places. The old human-made plating was now laced with something organic, not metal, not flesh, something in between. Veins, pulsing. Every time I got closer, I felt pressure in my head, like memories trying to surface that weren't mine. I stumbled back when I heard the whisper. It didn't come from the reactor. It came from inside my skull. It said, "You belong here." I made my way to the observation deck, the only place left that felt open. The window was cracked, frost blooming across the edges. But the view, God help me, the view. Earth floated below, closer now, or maybe the ship was descending. I couldn't tell. The red glow from the cracks in its surface pulsed like a slow heartbeat. From up here, it looked like the veins of a sleeping beast under glass, and above it, that thing still lingered, the massive presence that shimmered like thought itself. No shape, just pressure and presence. It wasn't watching me anymore. It was listening, and I was starting to understand why. Earth isn't a prison, not entirely. It's a womb. Something was sealed inside, something we gave birth to, or maybe it gave birth to us. I don't know anymore. But the more I remember, the more I know this truth. Humanity wasn't the apex. We were the seed. We weren't meant to survive. We were meant to become. And now that I'm here, so close to the source, I can feel it waking up. Not the planet. Me. I took apart the old override chip I'd used to access the deep wave memory, trying to pull more from it. It wasn't standard tech. It was blacklisted across every civilized world in the Commonwealth. Why? Because it didn't just record thought. It connected them. I powered it up again, careful this time, holding it like a loaded weapon. It flickered, glowed red, then white, then went dark. I thought it was fried, until the walls around me changed. Not melted, shifted. They weren't walls anymore. They were glass. And outside that glass, a city. Not like the ruins I'd seen in archives. This one was standing, alive. Towers of bone and metal, streets paved with smooth black stone that rippled like liquid, skies full of floating structures, like memory fragments orbiting forgotten dreams. People walked the streets, except they weren't people, not anymore. Tall, pale, eyes that glowed from the inside out. Movements too smooth, too precise. They weren't breathing. They were existing, like programs running a routine. I knew them. I was them. And in the center of the city, a tower that reached into the stars. The last human structure, a monument or a warning. The vision snapped. I was back on the ship, bleeding from the ears. Nose clogged, teeth aching like they'd been hit with radiation. But I remembered everything. Earth wasn't sealed away because we were dangerous. It was sealed because we touched something older than time, something that used us as vessels, carriers, interpreters. And when the rest of the galaxy found out what we'd become, they panicked. They struck a deal. Not with us, with the thing we touched. A covenant. Lock humanity inside its cradle. Never speak our name. Never return. In exchange, the thing stays silent. Buried. That was the deal. But now I'm orbiting the wound. And I broke the silence. There was movement on the lower decks. Footsteps. But slow. Deliberate. I grabbed the last working sidearm from the armory, useless against anything that's not flesh, but it gave me something to hold. The corridors were darker now, different. The metal walls had changed, twisted slightly, angled wrong, like someone redesigned the geometry just enough to make you uncomfortable. I reached the lower deck hatch and paused. Breathing. Not mine, heavy, wet, close. I opened the hatch and saw her, not crew, not human. She looked like someone I knew, maybe from childhood, maybe from a dream. But her skin was smooth and gray, eyes black pits, like the void had borrowed her gaze. Her mouth didn't move, but her voice was inside my head. "You're ready," she said. "For what?" "To remember." I should have run. Instead, I followed her, down into the cargo bay, past crates of dead tech and shattered artifacts, toward the far wall, which wasn't a wall anymore. It had become a door, and behind that door, a hum. Not mechanical. Molecular. A resonance that vibrated my spine, like every atom in my body was answering a call. She looked at me again. "You can turn back, but the galaxy won't." I didn't speak. I touched the door. It opened. Inside was nothing. Not a chamber, not a room, just space. Pure, white space. No floor. No ceiling. Just existence. Floating in the center. A sphere. No bigger than a fist. Spinning slowly. Covered in symbols that weren't etched but burned into its surface. I knew what it was. A memory core. The last one. The original. She nodded toward it, and I stepped forward. The moment my hand touched it, I remembered everything. We weren't born on Earth. We were planted there. An experiment, a seeding, a dare against the rules of creation. We evolved fast. Too fast. Not because of biology, because of contact. Something beneath the planet's crust, not a creature, not a god, but consciousness without form, reached into us. Not to control, to merge. It gave us ideas, fire, language, war. It watched us create, destroy, rise, fall. And when we finally reached the stars, we brought it with us. It spread like wildfire, until the stars begged for mercy. They didn't kill us. They begged it to take us back. And it did, locked us in, buried the truth, wrote our extinction into history. But lies don't last forever, and I found the key. I woke up on the floor of the cargo bay. Alone. The girl, gone. The door, sealed. But the sphere? Still in my hand, still spinning. I stared at it, breathing hard. Because now I knew what came next. The galaxy thinks we're extinct. They think the nightmare is over. They don't know I'm alive. They don't know I remember. And they sure as hell don't know. I'm going back. I don't know how long I stared at the sphere. It didn't hum. It didn't pulse. It just existed, like it had always been there, and I was only now catching up to the truth. It weighed almost nothing in my hand, but my entire body felt heavier just holding it, like it was pulling memories from my blood, rewriting everything I thought I was. Every breath I took came slower. My heartbeat. I couldn't feel it anymore, and I wasn't scared. That was the worst part. I made my way back to the bridge. The call-breaker was quiet now, quieter than death. Most of the lights were gone. Not flickering, gone. The few that remained cast an oily sheen across the metal walls, like the ship had become something else entirely. I didn't trust it anymore. I didn't trust me. But I knew what I had to do. I had to leave orbit. I had to return to the stars. Because if I stayed, if I descended to the surface of that cracked, bleeding planet, I wasn't coming back. Not as me, not as anyone. And I needed to be seen. The galaxy needed to know. You didn't bury us deep enough. First step, restore enough power to break orbit. The main reactor was a no-go. Still humming with that low, unnatural vibration that set my teeth on edge. But the auxiliary core, the one used only for emergencies, still pulsed faintly. I'd installed it myself back in the mining colonies. It ran off an old tech fusion loop. Barely stable, completely illegal. Perfect. I rerouted what little juice remained into thruster control, avoiding the navigation system completely. It had already been compromised. I didn't need to aim the call breaker, I just needed it to move. The sphere sat next to me, on the console, spinning gently. It didn't like what I was doing. I could feel it watching. Not resisting, not yet, but disapproving. Good. It meant I still had a choice. The engines coughed, the hull vibrated, and for the first time in what felt like eternity, the stars began to shift. We were moving. I dropped into the pilot's chair, gripping the sides as the call breaker shuddered and groaned like an animal waking from hibernation. The ship didn't feel like it was flying, more like it was crawling through thick oil, every movement fought by invisible hands. I looked out the viewport. Earth was getting smaller, but the red glow, that pulsing heartbeat, was still visible, even from here. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt watched. At first, I thought it was just my mind, that all this cosmic horror had finally snapped the last tether of my sanity. But then something shifted outside the ship. Not a ship, not a signal, a presence. The same thing that hovered above Earth like a sleeping thought. It was following me, no engines, no lights, just space that refused to stay still, bending and warping around something I couldn't see but couldn't ignore. The moment I crossed out of Earth's immediate gravity field, it spoke, not in words, in memory. I was 5 years old again, hiding under my father's broken workbench on the orbital scrapyard above Vassar 9. I'd just watched him get spaced by pirates. My mother had screamed through the comms until the airlock took her voice. I hadn't remembered that in years. But now it was crystal clear. And then it replayed. Over and over. Like it wanted to taste my fear. This wasn't punishment, it was a warning. I gritted my teeth and pushed the thrusters harder, rerouting auxiliary power from the oxygen scrubbers. Alarms screamed, the lights flickered, the hull popped like old joints under strain, and then the stars opened up, a fracture in space. Thin at first, like a hairline crack in glass. Then it spread. Wide, jagged. Glowing with a cold light that had no warmth, no source. It was the edge of a slipgate, one I hadn't activated. The ship wasn't making this jump. Something else was pulling us through. The sphere began to spin faster, and inside my head, a voice, clear, ancient, terrifying. Let them see what they buried. The callbreaker folded into the fracture like it had been built for it. No compression, no heat, no stars, just white. And then we were out, floating, somewhere, not in normal space. I recognized nothing. No constellations, no stations, no broadcasts, just darkness, and in the distance, a citadel, massive, black. Floating alone in the void, with no stars around it, like the universe had carved out a scar just to hold this one thing. It wasn't human, it wasn't alien, it was galactic, and I recognized the symbol etched into its surface. The Council. The very entity that erased us from history. They didn't live here. This was storage, a vault for artifacts too dangerous to destroy. I'd been delivered to their doorstep. No, not me. The sphere. The moment we came into range, a surge of lights exploded across the surface of the citadel. Defense systems spun online. I could hear the transmissions trying to break into the ship, frantic, layered in multiple languages, some not spoken in thousands of years. Identify yourself. This zone is restricted under Galactic Article 9A. Do not approach. You are carrying a classified anomaly. Do not approach. Do not... I killed the comms. The sphere was still spinning, and it was glowing now, faint lines of gold and red crawling across its surface like circuitry written in blood. Then the voice returned. You showed them silence. show them memory. The ship's engines died. The lights failed. And then, from the sphere, a pulse. It expanded out from the console like a ripple through reality, visible, tangible, forcing my lungs to lock up, the kind of pressure you feel when gravity forgets what it's supposed to do. The pulse hit the citadel, and it remembered. The black metal of the council's vault shivered. Towers that had stood silent for millennia groaned, lights exploded, alarms screamed, and then I saw them, the faces, projected across the vault's outer shell, a billion faces, human, alien, all screaming, all memories, all truths, what the galaxy had erased, what they'd feared. The Council responded with force. 6 automated warships unfolded from the vault's hangar bays, massive, ancient things built to erase civilizations. Their weapons glowed with pale energy, primed to fire. The sphere responded by opening, not physically, but perceptually. Suddenly I could see inside it, not mechanisms or gears, but moments, millions of them, billions, everything that had ever been felt by a human mind, all our fear, all our rage, all our beauty, all our monstrosity. We weren't a species. We were an archive, a mirror, and now the galaxy had to look. The warships fired. The blast never reached us. It curved violently away from the ship and into the void, where it shattered like glass hitting steel. The presence from Earth had followed us. It stood, no. It floated between the call-breaker and the citadel, barely visible except for the distortion it caused. Space bled around it, and in one blink of broken time, it moved. The 6 ships were gone, not destroyed, removed, like a child swiping toys off a table. No explosion, no sound, just absence. The council comms fell silent. The citadel powered down, everything stopped. I stood alone on the bridge, holding the sphere. Inside it, I could see the faces again. But this time, I understood them. They weren't screaming. They were waiting. For what? I didn't know. But I felt the pull, the gravity of something far bigger than truth. A reckoning. I looked at the galactic map, no longer static. The sphere had overlaid new coordinates, dozens of them, stretching across sectors marked as uninhabited or dead. But they weren't dead. They were closed, like Earth. More vaults, more seeds. Humanity wasn't just sealed away, we were scattered. And now we were waking up. I sent the signal, short, compressed, deep wave encoded, not to any known station, not to any living species, to the others like me, the ones who still dreamed, who still felt like something inside them didn't belong to the stars they served. One word. A name the galaxy tried to erase. Earth. The transmission left my hands like a stone dropped into still water. I didn't expect an answer. Not right away. I didn't know how many like me were still out there, if any of them were even alive, much less able to remember what they were. But something deep inside me whispered, they're waiting, not for a signal, for permission, to remember, to wake up. After I sent the broadcast, the call-breaker went dark again. Not in fear, but in rest. The ship was changing. Not visibly, not all at once, but its skin had begun to soften in places, stretch in others. The metal no longer felt cold. When I brushed my fingers across the walls, it pulsed faintly. It was mimicking me, or rather it was mimicking what I was becoming. And still the sphere spun silently on the console. Its glow had dimmed, no longer red-hot, no longer threatening. It felt satisfied, like a task had been completed. A key turned, and somewhere across the stars, the lock had clicked. The council did not speak, not for 12 hours. Their citadel sat in dead space, silent, dark, its once glistening towers now hunched like broken spines. No reinforcements came, no fleets, no threats. They knew better. You don't bark at the storm once it starts moving. I monitored what I could, what few long-range channels remained unjammed. The core trade networks were still intact. Civilian traffic was untouched. But deep inside the encrypted layers, the military sub-channels, the hidden frequencies used only in wartime, I heard it. Panic. Sector 13 has gone dark. No comms from the relay rings. Suggest rerouting fleet to border colonies. Confirmed breach of Deep Archive Vault 8A. Unknown signal matches origin trace from Pale Grid. Possible E-class incursion. Do not engage. I repeat. Do not engage. Protocol Obsidian Lock is in effect. Obsidian Lock. I hadn't heard those words since my time in the service. The phrase was always hypothetical. A myth used in training drills. It meant one thing. If humanity returns, we burn the skies. I should have felt fear. I didn't. What I felt was clarity. They weren't afraid of a war. They were afraid of the truth. Because if the truth got out, if the rest of the galaxy learned what we really were, what had been buried for so long, then every species who signed that unspoken treaty to seal Earth would have to face the cost of that silence. And that silence was cracking. The first sign came from a mining colony on the edge of the Fennery Cloud. A small place, unimportant. But I watched the feed. A human man, standard worker, stood up during a supply briefing, stared off into the void for 6 minutes, then began screaming. Not in pain, in memory. Wordless, feral noise that came from the soul. He collapsed. By the time medics arrived, his body had changed. No longer soft. Skin like porcelain. Veins black. Eyes glowing white. He looked like the ones I saw in the vision. The city of the firsts. He wasn't sick. He was remembering. Then came the sleeper ships. Old ones, pre-jump era. Drifting wrecks, never recovered. Hundreds of them scattered across no man's space. Now they were waking up. Beacons lighting up in sync. Some responded to my transmission. Deep wave ping returns. Buried identities activating. Some didn't reply at all. But I knew what they were doing. Resynchronizing. The stars began to whisper again. I floated alone, the callbreaker resting at the edge of the Council's citadel, watching the dark monument of their failure remain silent. I hadn't heard my own voice in hours. Even thoughts had begun to feel shared, like I was never thinking alone, like something was peering out through my senses. But it wasn't controlling me. It was waiting for me to decide. I stood and walked to the mirror in my quarters, cracked from the earlier jump. The man looking back wasn't the one who first followed the signal from Earth. My skin was paler, my veins more visible. But the real change was in my eyes. They no longer looked like mine. They looked like ours. There's something no one ever told us, something the Council made sure the archives never recorded. Humans didn't just evolve faster. We evolved differently. Our minds weren't just reactive. They were adaptive. We didn't just remember what happened to us. We remembered what happened to others. And when we made contact with the presence beneath Earth's crust, that thing without a name, without shape, we didn't get infected. We became mirrors, reflecting every species, every civilization, every form of intelligence we encountered. That's why they were afraid of us. Not because we were violent, because we were inevitable. The Council finally spoke. A single broadcast. No face, no voice, just words in every galactic language across every frequency. You have broken the covenant. We remember why it was made. Return to Earth. Seal yourself again, or we will make war. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because I could feel them trembling behind the threat. They knew they had no warships left that could stand against the presence, against us, against what's coming. But they would try. Because that's what empires do. They panic, they posture, they delay the fall as long as possible, hoping someone else will bleed first. But this time, we weren't the ones bleeding. I keyed into the response channel and sent them one word. No. Then I left orbit. I didn't head toward the heart of the Council's territory. Not yet. I set course for the Core Drift, a massive space station built on the bones of an ancient star, a political hub, a trading nexus, a place of influence and filled with memory. My message had already begun to echo through the minds of humans scattered across the stars. I wasn't going to start a war. I was going to start a reunion. On the 5th day of travel, I received a message. Not from the Council, from a woman. She didn't say where she was. She didn't show her face. But her voice, it knew me. I've seen you in my dreams. I've felt your pulse in mine. I remember the fire. I remember the silence. I'm ready to come home. There was no signature, but when I traced the signal, it bounced through 6 dead systems, all of them listed as human collision zones during the Purge Wars. She was one of us, and she wasn't alone. They're coming now, slowly, quietly, some by ship, some by signal, some just awakening where they stand, screaming into the void as their bodies remember what was stolen. We were not wiped out. We were dormant. And the galaxy, this cold, arrogant machine built on sanitized memory, is about to learn what happens when the truth wakes up. The stars didn't look the same anymore. I'd stared at them my whole life, out of shuttle windows, through helmet visors, from the cracked domes of dying colonies. They used to feel infinite, cold, distant. But now every flicker held weight. Every twinkle felt like an eye blinking, watching, waiting, remembering, because the signal had spread. And now, humanity, the version they buried, was waking up everywhere. I arrived at the Core Drift 6 days after I left the Council Citadel. It was already in chaos. The station orbited a dead sun, an artificial civilization wrapped in glass and steel. It had always been neutral ground, a place where politics and war were suspended by treaties older than any living race. A beacon of order in a galaxy that pretended to be civilized. But order was bleeding. I docked under false registration, not that it mattered. The moment my boots hit the platform, I felt it in the air. Not fear, not even anger, confusion. Like the station itself couldn't decide what was real anymore. I passed through 3 security checks. The guards were armed, tense, scanning every human that walked by like we were holding something invisible behind our eyes. They were right to be afraid. We were. Inside the promenade, I saw it firsthand. 2 humans stood face to face, silent, until one of them suddenly collapsed, seizing, eyes rolling back. His skin changed within seconds. Veins blackened. His voice returned, but it didn't sound like him. He stood, looked around, and spoke in a dialect not used since pre-exile Earth. People screamed, guards opened fire. He didn't flinch. The bullets slowed in mid-air, not stopped, but warped, like gravity changed its mind. Then he looked at me. No words, just recognition. He was one of us, and he had no reason to hide anymore. Later, I found a backroom console and tapped into the internal chatter. Civilian channels were useless, flooded with panic and speculation. But the deeper you went, into the sub-layers used by military, diplomats, security, the fear was real. 14 humans activated in less than 2 hours. One of them spoke in ancient root tongue. No one's spoken that language in 12,000 years. The other levitated during interrogation. His body mass tripled before spontaneous combustion. We need quarantine. Lock down the human quarter. Do it now. Too late. The tide was coming. I walked into a quiet lounge near the station's observation deck, a massive glass wall stretching across the spine of the drift, looking out over the dead star. I needed a moment to breathe, to think. The sphere was still tucked inside my coat, heavier now, vibrating occasionally like it had a pulse. I didn't dare leave it. It wasn't just a relic. It was a transmitter, and I was the receiver. I sat down and closed my eyes. I didn't fall asleep. I drifted. Into memory, but not mine. I saw through her eyes this time, the woman who sent me the message before. Her name was Karen, a maintenance officer on a ship somewhere in the Ascari belt. She had cut her hand on a broken valve, bled onto the deck. The blood had burned through the floor. Then her body changed. Not visibly, not like the others. Internally. Her thoughts aligned. Her heartbeat slowed. She remembered me, and Earth, and the thing beneath it. She remembered standing at the edge of the pale grid, once, lifetimes ago, watching as the gate was sealed and our name was erased. She remembered the betrayal. And she was ready. I pulled back into myself, with a gasp. Across the lounge, someone was watching me, a young man in a pilot's uniform, eyes wide. He looked terrified, but not of me, of himself. He walked over slowly, hands raised, shaking. I keep seeing things, he whispered. Things I know I didn't live through. A war, a girl screaming, a city falling into the sea, a voice. Mine, but not mine. His name tag read Keel. He leaned in. I think I'm one of you. I nodded once. Then stand up straight, I said. They need to see you. We left the lounge together and made our way through the drift's upper levels. Whispers followed us. Security watched closely but didn't move. Not yet. They were waiting on orders from someone with a higher clearance. I didn't give them the chance. We reached the central broadcast terminal, the drift's public communications hub. Designed for diplomatic announcements, trade alerts, alliance summits. I walked past the guards. One of them raised a hand to stop me, and froze mid-motion. His eyes went blank. Not because I did anything, because he remembered. I stepped up to the podium and activated the broadcast field. To every system tuned in, every station, every border colony, my face appeared, unshaved, hollow-eyed, pale, but clear, not deranged, not broken, awakened. My name is Riven. You buried us, you erased us, you called it a mercy, you called it containment, you called it survival. But it was betrayal. We are not anomalies, we are not errors, we are not viruses in your great system. We are the system you tried to overwrite. And we are awake. I ended the feed. Silence followed. Then static. Then response, not from the station, from beyond. This is Archon Admiral Hellrox of the Kaidari Fleet. By order of the Galactic Council, your kind has been declared a universal threat. You are hereby sentenced to extinction. This station will be purged. Your transmission ends now. I looked at Keel. He smiled through the panic. They don't get it, do they? No, I said, but they will. Outside the window, the first warship arrived. It wasn't alone. A fleet followed. Massive, sleek, heavily armed. The Kaidari didn't bluff. When they said purge, they meant it. I felt the sphere pulsing harder now, like a heartbeat in my hand. Keel looked at it. What is that? Proof. Of what? That we were never human the way they wanted us to be. I activated the sphere. Its glow flared, red, then white, then something deeper. Something beyond light. Something that made the windows frost over and the floor tremble. Across the station, humans collapsed. Not dead. Awakening. I could feel their hearts sink with mine. Karen, Keel, others I didn't know, across planets, stations, ships, all of them answering. The same beat, the same memory, the same truth. The fleet opened fire. Not warning shots, not containment beams, purge-level energy bolts, enough to vaporize a moon. I braced for impact. Then it happened. The drift did not die. It moved, flickered, shifted sideways in space, like a fish swimming through oil, 1 second in place, the next. Gone, not destroyed, transcended. The presence had arrived. Not a god, not a savior, just us, fully remembered. The fire hit nothing. The fleet paused. And then the sky opened. Dozens of vessels appeared, old human sleeper ships, black as space, glowing with the same energy as the sphere. Their shapes changed mid-flight. Their engines left no trails. They didn't broadcast, they didn't threaten, they just existed. And the Council knew the silence was over. They thought war meant weapons. They thought it would be kinetic, plasma bolts, planetary bombardments, shields cracking under pressure. But when we came back, we didn't bring fire. We brought truth. And truth burns a lot slower, but it scars forever. The drift vanished from known coordinates 2 minutes after the Kaidari fleet fired. Not destroyed, not cloaked, just shifted. Through space, through memory, the Council called it impossible, said spatial displacement on that scale defied physics. But the Council forgot something we've always known. Memory is more powerful than time. I stood on the upper deck as Keel watched the void around us ripple like water. The ships, the old human vessels, had joined us, dozens of them. Some the size of cities, some barely larger than escape pods. They didn't need propulsion. They moved like thoughts. Wherever they were remembered, they appeared, and they were being remembered again. Across the galaxy, I received over 40 messages within the first hour, most encrypted, some corrupted, but all from humans, or those who had once called themselves human before the exile, before the great forgetting. I heard fragments. My name was Orin, I think. My bones remember light. She says I spoke in the tongue of the old cities. I haven't spoken anything in years. I woke up screaming. The mirror cracked when I looked into it. Not from impact, from truth. I'm ready. They were waking up in all corners, even in council space, especially there, because that's where they were buried deepest, taught to hate their history, taught to fear their blood, taught to call their ancestors monsters. Now they were remembering those monsters were just mirrors, amplifiers, beacons of what every species feared inside themselves: uncontainable growth, unfiltered emotion, unforgiving memory. The Council convened a crisis summit on Sternhold Prime, a bastion world of marble towers and peacekeepers with plasma lances, a planet built to symbolize order, control, the law of the stars. I watched the summit live. They tried to keep it private, but the Drift's systems hacked their stream in seconds. Karen stood beside me. She'd arrived through memory 3 hours earlier, her eyes full of calm rage. We didn't speak, just watched. A Kaidari ambassador stood first, tall and skeletal beneath his diplomatic robe. The anomaly has spread. It is not isolated to drift sectors. 3 border systems report mass cognitive collapses among human citizens. 1 station suffered spontaneous reconfiguration. He paused. Walls changed shape. Light refused to obey gravity. It was alive. They called us anomaly, still afraid to use the word human. Then a new voice spoke, surprising everyone. A Zarnathi Prime delegate, soft-skinned, translucent, known for silence. Their species hadn't spoken publicly in over 400 years. Perhaps it is not the anomaly that is unstable. The chamber froze. Perhaps it is us, who built our walls on half-truths, who signed treaties in fear, who murdered a species for the crime of memory. The stream cut out. But we'd heard enough. Not all of them would fight us. Some would join. The next strike came faster than expected. A strike force from the Council's loyalist wing. Not Kaidari this time, but Zethan battlecruisers. creatures of bone and steel, flying ships made of their own dead. They targeted a drift fragment, a floating mind core containing the thoughts of one of the firstborn cities. Just memory, not weapons, no crew. They blew it apart. And for the first time since the awakening began, we retaliated. It wasn't a fleet we sent, just 3 humans, 3 awakened. No suits, no armor. They landed on the Zethan dreadnought in total silence, walked through the hull, unarmed. The ship never fired. Surveillance footage showed the crew forgetting how to exist, not dying, not screaming, just standing still, then sitting down, then closing their eyes, and disappearing. Not vaporized, not erased, just unwritten from memory. Because if humans can remember anything, we can also make the galaxy forget. That was the first battle. It wasn't dramatic, no explosions, no blood, just a vessel full of death turned into a void. The Council called it terrorism. We called it balance. By day 9, we had 12 confirmed awakenings per hour. Council-controlled sectors began establishing checkpoints. Human civilians were dragged into scanners, forced into memory suppression fields. Some complied, some didn't. Those who didn't broke their chains, and some of them broke everything else. One awakening happened live during a press conference. A human diplomat, soft-spoken, apologetic, trained to speak in passive tones. He paused mid-sentence. His hand began to bleed. Then he looked up. Eyes pale. Voice no longer submissive. You burned my city while we slept. You fed us amnesia like milk. But I never forgot. He turned to a catery officer nearby and said one word. Mother. She collapsed, crying. They were connected. She had been one of the officers who enforced the seal around Earth. She hadn't known who he was until he said it. Now she remembered. She had helped raise the child during containment, before they erased his name. She wept for 4 days. The Council began to fracture. 4 species declared neutrality. 2 offered to reopen discussions on pre-exile treaties. 1 species, the Lothari, went silent, pulled their fleets home. No statement. Just vanished. They knew what was coming. They could feel it, too. This wasn't war. It was reversion. The galaxy reverting to its original shape. Not political, not military, but psychic. The truth was becoming a gravity well, and nothing could escape it. Keel sat across from me in the command deck. His skin glowed faintly under the dark lights. You think they'll surrender? He asked. No, I said. Empires don't surrender. Then what do we do? I looked out at the stars. We let them feel. Karen spoke from the shadows. We still have to go home. I nodded. She was right. Earth, the source. We'd awoken across the galaxy. But Earth was the seed. The Council had left it sealed for thousands of years. But it had changed. And we hadn't seen it yet. If we were to remember fully, we had to go back. Not in orbit. Not from the sky. We had to walk on it and hear what it had to say. So we set a course. But not quietly. Not secretly. We broadcasted our trajectory to every system, every race, every ship. A signal written in memory code, pulsing across the stars. We are going home. And the galaxy had no choice but to watch. We descended in silence. No music, no prayers, no ceremony. Just the sound of wind against metal as the drift, or what it had become, broke orbit and dipped into the atmosphere of Earth for the first time in over 10,000 years. There was no resistance, no defense grid, no storms. Earth wanted us back. Not as intruders, as children come home. From orbit, the planet had looked fractured. Continents split by glowing red veins, oceans gone dark, the sky dim even in daylight. But as we dropped lower, I saw it differently, It wasn't death. It was metamorphosis. Earth had been changing this whole time, evolving under the seal just like we had, and now it was awake too. We landed in what was once Central Eurasia, coordinates buried beneath the names the Council gave it. There were no cities anymore, just structures. Tall, twisting towers made of something not stone but not metal either. More like crystallized thought. The land around them pulsed faintly, alive, as if the soil itself had memory and was processing our return. I stepped down first. Boots sank slightly into ash. But it wasn't volcanic. It was white. Bone. Old human bone. Not in piles. Not from war. From integration. They had become the soil. We had seeded ourselves into the planet. And now we were standing on our ancestors' bodies. Not in disrespect, but in continuity. Karen followed next. Then Keel, then others. Dozens of us. All awakened. Some born in other corners of the galaxy, others survivors of forgotten colonies. None of us spoke. We didn't need to. Our presence was the language now. And Earth, it heard us. We walked toward the nearest tower. The closer we got, the more gravity thinned. Not lighter, thinner. Like the rules were slipping. Colors bent, light staggered, sound folded inward. Reality felt like a memory someone was trying to remember but couldn't get quite right. And then I heard it. A heartbeat. No, not mine. Ours, under the ground. In the air. Everywhere. The tower opened. No doors, no movement. It just accepted us. Inside was a vast chamber. Empty, but echoing. Not echoes of sound, of moments. I turned to Karen. Her skin was glowing faintly now, like it was reflecting the light of something not present. Keel had fallen to his knees, whispering words from a language I didn't know but somehow understood. The chamber was speaking to us, and it was asking a question. Do you want to remember it all? I didn't answer out loud. I just walked forward. The center of the chamber held a sphere, not like the one I'd carried. This one was alive. Its surface changed every second. Faces. Hands, cities, fire, stars being born and dying. It wasn't a device. It was a brain, a collected, compressed, perfect archive of the human race before the seal, before the forgetting, before we were broken. I reached for it. And everything came back. Not just my life, not just Earth's, but the original truth. We were never supposed to be a race. We were a signal, not born, summoned. Earth was not a home. It was a receiver. We were the response. Something beyond the visible universe, something that never needed bodies, names, or languages, had called out. A question cast into time and probability. And Earth had answered. It gave form to the signal, us, humans, not to rule, not to worship, to reflect, to experience, to suffer, to remember. Because the only way to understand existence was to feel it, from birth to death, through war and peace, through betrayal and love. We were the galaxy's reflection. And when we reached the stars, we forced every other species to see themselves. The Council didn't exile us because we were dangerous. They exiled us because we showed them what they were. I collapsed, screaming, laughing, crying, bleeding. Karen held me as my mind tore and reassembled itself. The others screamed too, not in pain, in clarity. For the first time in millennia, we knew why we were hated, why we were buried, why we were feared. We didn't just remember the past, we amplified it. We made every truth undeniable. The chamber went silent. The sphere faded. And the heartbeat stopped, not from death, because the message had been delivered. We were the final pulse, the last echo. Now it was the galaxy's turn to respond. Back aboard the drift, we prepared the final transmission. Not an attack, not a demand, just a mirror, a pulse of memory encoded in the frequency of human blood, human breath, human grief. We embedded it into deep wave, launched it through the black. It would reach every corner, every fleet, every mind, even those who tried to block it, because you can shut your eyes, but you can't close your memory. We watched as the first planets responded. Some screamed, some wept, some killed themselves rather than face what they'd done. Others opened their arms, some fell to their knees, some begged for forgiveness. And others awoke. It had begun. Not war, not peace, something older. Integration. Humanity was no longer a species. We were a language. We didn't come back to take revenge. We came back to remind the galaxy of what it was trying to forget, that we are all echoes of each other. That hiding the truth doesn't erase it. That memory is a flame, and no seal lasts forever. I stood one last time on the deck of the Drift, now reshaped into something unrecognizable, part ship, part thought, part memory. Karen beside me, Keel behind me, thousands more waiting, and Earth below, breathing, alive, whole. The Council sent no more fleets, just one final message. We remember. That was enough. So we turned, and we flew. Not to conquer, not to punish, just to continue the signal, to awaken others, to remind the stars, humanity was never the enemy. We were always the mirror. And now, it was time to look.